Hello and welcome to Gaming Chat, the podcast where we invite members of the gaming community and industry to join us to play some of their favourite multiplayer games or to talk to us about games they have created. Joining me today, I am your host Mike, and joining me is Ryan Drewry, of Hunter's Moon Games, and we're here to talk about Dreaded Wunder. So Ryan, please say hello.
Hello.
Hello. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role with Hunter's Moon Games?
Absolutely. So, I am, I'm Ryan, as you know, the producer, programmer, and animator for Hunter's Moon Games. A bit of a nerd, and I love all things mythical and legendary. Yeah.
And how did Hunter's Moon Games first come about?
So it came about as a result of our final year at university. We were told to do a project that was led by our own kind of what we wanted to do. And so I sort of joined together with four other friends of mine, and we just sort of came together really. And I'd say that Hunter's Moon didn't actually properly come together until we wanted to join a program called Transfuser. This is sort of a program that's done every year. They take on sort of teams from university and then help them make a start into the industry. So I'd say, yeah, that's kind of how we founded.
Brilliant. I mean, I believe we have got an interview lined up with Transfuser as well to talk a little bit about like their programs and stuff like that. So it's good to hear that you yourselves have actually used the program. Helps give it a little bit of a extra clout as well, and that it's working.
Absolutely.
So now I know you said about your role at Hunter's Moon Games. What is your capacity with Dreaded Wunder? How are you involved with that?
Yes, so I'm sort of team lead, so I wear a lot of hats. So that involves kind of helping out with some narrative, as well as sort of sound design, hopping on if anyone's got any issues, transferring anything into engine, sort of a general helping hand to anyone in the team who needs it. And I'd say they are as much of that help to me as I am to them. But primarily, I guess I'm more of the gameplay programmer. I also take on the assets and models for the characters, and I rig and animate them. And I manage, of course, the business side of our studio, the more dull area of what we do.
Which needs to be done. I mean, they do kind of go hand in hand.
They do. Oh, they do.
So when did development for Dreaded Wunder begin, and what inspired its creation?
Good question. So, unofficially, it started way back in January of this year when the final project of our university started. And then I'd say at that point it was still a university project. We knew our deadline. It was unrealistic for a full-scale game. But by May, when we knew that we had something to push for after university, after we graduated, that's when it went into full development. So from May onwards, that was when it first started. And it started because late one night I decided to walk home after hanging out with some friends, and I walked through Norwich Market, of all places. And this isn't Norwich Market as you'd know it in the daytime, rustle and bustle, you're literally shoulder to shoulder people all the time. No, instead it's this very kind of liminal space feeling environment where every corner feels like there's someone around it. And I thought, well, that just feels like a perfect environment for a horror game. And I was reignited for my love with myths and legends, and it just kind of took off from there.
So could you give us a brief overview of Dreaded Wunder? What kind of game is it? I mean, you've touched on it being horror, so what kind of that horror game is it, and what is it about, basically?
Absolutely. So, Dreaded Wonder is a psychological horror game set in our very own city of Norwich, featuring local myths and legends, such as our very own iteration of the Black Shuck and combinations of eldritch-type themes, just to make for that extra spine-chilling and reality-warping experience. So, in order to survive in this kind of game, you need to navigate this twisted and contorted version of the places found both above and below Norwich with your very own mobile phone in-game to help you. Keep it close to hand because it's your looking glass to see the unseen.
Ooh. And what What made you decide, if you don't mind me asking, what made you decide to use the city of Norwich as, the game setting?
So, I was kind of born and raised here, and over time, I've been around it all. I've seen it all, but over time, I picked up upon a lot of things that we have here in Norwich. Sorry, hang on. And what Norwich has is a very interesting history in terms of what we have below. So there are a large number of tunnel systems that lead between different places in Norwich. One good example is from the castle to the courthouse. This used to transfer prisoners to and from without taking them into the public eye. We also have the
Okay.
understreets, which are back from the 15th century. In Norwich, we apparently build up the very streets you walk on nowadays. There is
Mm.
underneath, there are examples of just sustained streets and old housing from the time that's just been left there. Um, and so it built up this library of different areas in my mind that could be used for such a kind of game, including well, now shut off. Unfortunately, you can't go around and see it, but urban explorers have done the work for us. A chalk mine, or a few that are kind of located in and around Norwich. That
Okay.
again, perfect locations.
I mean, I suppose one of the other questions that I have is probably redundant at this point. To ask, were other locations considered, or was Norwich, pretty much locked in from the get go?
No, that's still a valid question, and I have a pretty interesting answer for you actually. So when this game first started being developed, in earlier stages, because of the Black Shuck, one of our main big baddies in the game, kind of found its place, found its foothold as a myth back over in Bungay and sort of Blytheborough, we had considered using these areas because that is, of course, where it was born. However, in the source material we used to also help name our game, they also mention Norwich as a kind of like landmark, somewhere that they know was well known at the time, more so than Bungay or Blytheborough ever was. So
Yeah.
it felt almost natural to bring it back here and have those locations, which may still turn up in the game, be more of a contextual narrative connection. You'll go back there, you'll see the events that transpired that caused you to be in the position you're in. So we did think of locations to go to, and we will be using them.
Ooh. Since Norwich has an extensive array of myths and legends, would you be able to give us an example of the few that made it into Dreaded Wunder, and maybe list some that failed to make the cut?
Absolutely. So this is an interesting part. So without spoiling too much, I'll be brief. We have three creatures that have made it and made the cut, so to speak, in terms of being planned to be added into Dreaded Wonder. We of course have, as I've mentioned before, the Black Shuck, who's our main big bad with a score to settle with the main player. Sorry, the player character, not the main player. And we have Grey Ladies. These are Dreaded Wonder's tragic terrors, and I think I'll leave that one there. And finally, we have the Lantern Man. Now, while not as prominent as the other two will be in the narrative and story of Dreaded Wonder, he will have a role to play while you navigate the deep horrors beneath. And all of these creatures we have classed through development as death omens. So while they have a similar goal, the way they achieve this, the way they manipulate their environment around you, will be different creature to creature.
Ooh. Given the shock and awe nature of Dreaded Wonder and its strong narrative focus, are you concerned that some players might not find the game as striking during subsequent playthroughs? That's a hard word to pronounce for some reason.
No
Never
worries.
had a problem before. That may not find the game as striking during subsequent playthroughs. Or are there plenty of twists and secrets and alternate endings available so that players are encouraged to play through Dreaded Wonder, multiple times to catch the full experience of the game?
Now, again, without spoiling too much, because I don't want to ruin it for the players out there. There will
Mhm.
be plenty of twists and turns, and a good number of secrets to discover while they play. So we have planned some collaborations, or the intent to collaborate with some local artists and add a few Easter eggs and collectibles with some narrative significance for players to go and find during their playthrough. An example we've already got in our kind of working demo is a comic done by a good friend of ours from university who we gave our creature Shuck to and said, make this creature fit the nature and the kind of plot of your comic, but have it include these things. And the things we had it include was the base nature of Shuck. So it gives the player a hint as to the kind of ability that Shuck has to haunt its victims and how it will torment its prey through twisting a reality.
We have spoken a lot about, is it Shuck or Shut? Sorry.
Shuck, so the black Shuck,
Black Shuck.
SHUCK. Yeah.
CK, the Black Shuck. And this is obviously a character from lore, from,
yes, from myths and
Norwich
legends.
and that. So,
yeah.
Can you talk about the origin of this this character, this entity, this being?
Yes, of course. This is the creature that has an origin in a few tales. The most prominent ones are told of it attacking a church in a little bit south of Norfolk or Norwich. In that, on a very, very stormy night, it broke in and ran down like the pews and ended up attacking and killing two of the parishioners along with a child. It then jumped upon the rafters and with a bolt of lightning flash scratched the doors on its way out. This is the most prominent story told. If you look it up, this is the one that's told repeatedly, but others tell it walking the sort of back lanes of countrysides and haunting and or being around graveyards. It's that church grim type of creature. And often floating on a cloud. There are also iterations where it either has one eye or two. That's when the story starts to differ. And of course, why we looked at Blytheborough and Bungay as a sort of contextual narrative point for what we might add into Dreaded Wunder. But we have, of course, done our own take on him. He is a creature of a rural area. You know, what's scary in a rural area? In the countryside, it would be wild dogs, things that would harm children if they were out too late. But you can't have that same behavior for taking it into an urban setting like Norwich. You have to transform it, evolve it. So what's scary in an urban setting? Unfortunately, it's people. And so what we've done in the design, which you can go and see on our socials, is we've made him more humanoid, and he's bigger, he's bulkier, he's twisted. But it's very humanoid in front half base. You know, his arms are very, he's got opposable thumbs, hands, things that will set you off that look unnatural, give you that uncanny feeling.
And what is it about the horror genre that appealed to you and the team and made you want to develop a game within that genre?
Well, Hunter's Moon will, and going ahead, plan to always make a game that takes massive inspiration from myths and legends of our local culture. But why we decided to start with more of a horror angle was just, I think most of us in the team, if not all of us, have always had a lot of fun playing horror. I myself love and admire horror and how it can create a genuinely immersive experience and the tricks they use to keep you on edge, to send shivers down your spine. It's unlike a game where you're satisfied after playing, You go around, shoot a few zombies in COD, you're quite satisfied. In a horror game, it's not satisfaction you walk away with, but the simulation of an event that causes you terror in a controlled way. So I've always admired that aspect of it, and that's what I was kind of drawn to with creating something like this.
Since horror can differ depending on the person, and that Hunter's Moon Games is a development team consisting of 5 members, would you say Dreaded Wunder is an equal blend of ideas among your team, or is it more of a case of one's view of horror stands out more?
I can say that we started out definitely in the latter. It was definitely, I had this very concrete set idea of how I wanted the game to be, which I now realise was completely foolish of me. Not allowing it to be adapted upon, not allowing it to change and evolve was kind of it was my Achilles heel during
Yeah.
development while we were still at uni. But then over time, and especially during Transfuser, I've kind of opened up the opportunity for the rest of my team to kind of throw their bids in, offer their opinion on where the story should go or how Shuck should move, different AI that we're going to add in, how they are different in behaviors to the player, as well as what other games we can draw inspiration from. Um, I've definitely I've loved developing it more now that there's a bigger of a library to draw from, and that comes from not just myself but the rest of the team as well. So I think we're now definitely in the former of that. It's a blend between all members of the team contributing the ideas, and I think that definitely helps keep the motivation up to continue development when they're finding parts of it that they like that they can build off of.
Oh, absolutely, because obviously, they are feeling just as much as involved, and because they're having input into the game, it's just as much their project as it is yours.
Okay, yeah,
And
of course.
it also being more involved with that, you are going to put more effort into it and more energy because you want it to succeed. I mean, it's not like your typical 9 to 5. You go and do your job, you do your bit, come home, and then you feel like unfulfilled. Basically, you did what was necessary, and that's about it. But when it comes to something where you're really, really got to put the effort in, and then when you come away from that, you think, hey, do you know what? I helped towards that. I contributed to that.
It's more fulfilling.
Oh yes. So on the subject of horror, what have been some of your favourite horror games to play and horror films to watch?
Ooh, what a question. I guess for me personally, because I can't speak for the rest of the team, they are their own people. For films, I'd have to say the entirety of the Alien franchise is just a masterpiece. I will not dispute that.
I know some people may have a different opinion to the later.
That is perfectly fine. That is perfectly
everyone's
fine.
entitled to their opinion.
No, of course. On top of that, Blair Witch has always been something that stayed in the back of my mind as time goes on because it introduced the idea of that kind of, it's a very different type of filming in a horror. You barely saw the Blair Witch herself, more the acts she did, or it did, I should say. And was done all by a camera held by one of the actors. It was definitely a standout type of film. And then we get onto the ones that still kind of properly scare me to this day, which is The Ritual and Hereditary. Those films, they still get me, but they have a lot of good things in them. And then for games, Alien Isolation, obviously.
Yep.
Outlast, mostly for a lot of inspirations behind the mechanics of Dreaded Wunder, but also because it was my first proper game I ever played once I got my PC. PT, still mad I didn't get it when it was on PlayStation, and finally Silent Hill.
A lot of good choices there. A lot of good choices. I have played Outlast 2.
Ooh, okay.
And there are a number of moments in that are just absolutely terrifying. You actually, you do dread for your life because obviously you can't defend yourself. It's like with a lot of typical like horror games where you can fight back in a way, or like fight zombies, or
like your Resident Evils and stuff like that, where they give you a gun. It's
gun,
kind of it's why I prefer Alien, because you get guns, you are given weapons, but in terms of how effective they are against the alien, they still only give you an edge slightly. You can blow fire at the alien, but it still doesn't die. It's that invincible fear entity. That's what I like about it. In Resident Evil, you can shoot your problems away. I'm not hating on the games at all. I still enjoy their story and their narrative and their gameplay, but in terms of experiencing true horror, that's it right there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've heard, I have played Alien Isolation myself, and I've also heard a lot of things from people who've also played the game, and it does have that like similar aspect where I mean, you can defend yourself, but it's more just keeping it at bay, rather than defeating it, and then you just carry on with the rest of the game. And it's like no, it's a constant threat throughout. It's like you have the flamethrower, you're feeling good about yourself, but it'll just keep it at bay, and then you do have to try and maintain that fuel, conserve that fuel, because it's going to come
Yeah.
after you again, and you don't want to have an empty tank when it does so. So yeah.
No, you don't.
Oh, so now you and the team were at MCM London Comic Con X EGX. How was the fan feedback there for those that played the game at the event?
I'd say it was fantastic. I mean, it's never easy taking a game, especially a horror game, to an event like this. There's a lot of kind of conflicting atmospheres you face, especially when a game is dependent on sound. But we got a lot
Yes.
of positive feedback and a lot of people expressing just how much the game got them at points. I mean, I can't, and this is going to sound sadistic, but I can't tell you how much joy I felt every time we had someone physically jump or scream. We had one or two people scream, and it was very rewarding, but they looked at us like we were sadists, and I don't blame them. It does look bad, but it's just confirmation that what we've done has worked. But of course, we also had a few people. Well, no, that's not a bad thing. We had a few people say they're not really into horror, but after playing our game, they said they'd be a bit more open to trying it, which is always nice to hear. And
Yes.
then we had a few people complain, and these aren't complaints that are unfounded. They're perfectly fair to make, and that's that they couldn't hear everything. Again, we can't help the environment it was set in, but hopefully they can catch a version of the game that they played on our itch to play. And some
Yep.
puzzles were a bit difficult at times, which is a fair comment. A lot of the theory work we did in uni is either wrong or we didn't do it right. Uh, but yeah, we have since taken on those comments, taken them to heart, and made the appropriate fixes to make things less confusing and frustrating, because that's the balance you've got to maintain with a game like this, is that you don't want to push to the point of it being frustrating. Confusion is good, because you've got to make them work it out, it's more rewarding. But to the point of
Oh yeah.
frustration doesn't quite work. And
No,
so,
it
yeah,
is
we've taken
finding
that to
a
heart.
happy medium between it all, isn't it?
Mm,
Because
of
I mean,
course.
I mean, a game that is just obnoxiously hard for being obnoxiously hard, when then no one's going to enjoy it. But there are, having complex puzzles that are just complex enough to make people really, really think. And then when they finally beat it, they feel that sense of reward, like,
Yes.
yes, I accomplished it. So it's just trying to find that point in between, where it's too hard or it's not hard enough, but
Yeah.
it has to be rewarding, like, most importantly.
Mm,
I mean, there
absolutely.
is a meme that I do see floating around on social media, and it's like there's a guy with a pickaxe, and he gives up. There's two guys, and they're digging a tunnel, and he's like right at
Oh, yes.
the end. And if he just kept going, he'd reach the treasure, and he's like
Yeah.
going home, and you've got somebody else like digging underneath. And it is
Yeah.
that kind of thing, you give up at just the moment where you could possibly, succeed.
Yes, exactly.
If you had to compare Dreaded Wonder to any other games in terms of gameplay, overall theme or story, what would be its closest match?
Oh, I would struggle to pick just one. I would say it's a combination, a chimera, if you
Mhm.
will, of a handful of them. So I'd say if you're looking at like the kind of mechanics of Dreaded Wonder, we pull a lot from Outlast. In Outlast, you're
Yeah,
dependent on a character relevant item. In Outlast, it's the camera, and this helps you
yes,
navigate. It helps give you an advantage. It's probably your only light in the darkness. In
yeah.
terms of kind of other elements that you find maybe in and about your environment, and this is one that actually came from some feedback at the event. Hellblade, Sayuna Sacrifice. A lot of people compared some
Right.
of our puzzle systems very closely to those. I had not looked into the game prior, but now I've looked into it, I understand fully. Um,
I suppose
uh,
because it's probably like runes and things like that, maybe.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. We've gone
Gotcha.
quite, digging into some Eldritch. We've gone into some rune work for that. When it comes to the creature and the creatures,
Yep.
very Alien Isolation in the way that we want to build them up to be able to learn in a way the player's pattern. If the
Mhm.
player spends too much time hiding, I want to punish that. And so Shuck won't just go, oh, they're hiding. It's not a Skyrim NPC with, oh, where did they go? It's, I know where you are, and I'm going to be round the corner when you're ready and stop peeing your pants. Um, And finally, I'd say for atmosphere, we've of course looked at the greats, Silent Hill, because to get that twisted reality, where better to go? PT also did it, but Silent Hill being the original, that would definitely be what we're kind of pulling for the environment, the atmosphere, if you will.
That's a lot of good choices, and a lot of good games to draw like inspiration from, and make comparisons to. Because a lot of people, there's a lot of like Silent Hill fans out there. There's a lot of Alien Isolation fans out there, like PT as well.
Oh yeah.
So if there is a game that has like those elements they enjoy, it's going to make it easier for them to pick up this game, because like, oh well, I enjoyed these games. Maybe I should give this a chance. Maybe I will enjoy this. So we are coming to a close with this interview now. So lastly, if you could list all the platforms on which you hope to release Dreaded Wunder on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the clear answer that comes to mind is we'd love it to be on all platforms. We'd never want to leave one out. But at one point in university, we were asked many times and had even considered porting to VR. But we are, of course, realistic. We are new to the scene. This is our first proper debut title. So we would be going off of the success of our release to Steam for PC. And while we don't have a date for the full release yet, we can tell you that we do plan to bring an official game demo to Steam in February. This is one that includes the narrative beats that the rest of the game will have, along with some more refinements that need to be made before we go to full release. This one will be the one prior to the game's release.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you everyone at home, because as with all good things that must come to an end, so must this podcast. So, Ryan, I'm going to give you the chance to plug your stuff. So, where can people find you? Where can people learn more about Dreaded Wunder? The floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So you can find us on our social medias. We have a website, we have a Twitter, or X. We have an Instagram, Blue Sky, and yes, even a Facebook, unfortunately. But you can primarily find me on our Discord server. I will give the link over to Mike here. But you can find us if you search Hunter's Moon Games on any of those platforms. We should come up. You should see a deer skull inside of the moon. That is us.
That's very, very specific. Meaning you can't miss it. It's like,
yes.
is that weird? Yes. Yeah, it's that one.
Oh yeah. Oh, the logo went through many iterations. Don't you worry.
You know what? I bet it did, because obviously, with it being like, the main antagonist of the game, you need something that's going to be outstanding and memorable, and people are going to look and think, yeah, that's the one. That's going to keep me up all night.
Oh, I wouldn't tell them
that's
that.
the
He'll
plan,
get a massive ego. Chuck is nothing but egotistical.
Well, everybody at home, thank you very much for listening and for watching. And until next time, keep on gaming.